Stop hyper-focusing on the finish line and laser focus on every stride. It really is the littlest things that make the biggest difference. So today we want to talk to you about how powerful just changing things up 1% at a time can really change everything. Let's do this. Welcome to the Small Town Big Church Leadership Podcast, a place for pastors, church leaders, and volunteers to grow themselves and the local church. We're pastors Brad and Misty Helton, church planters in rural America.
They say life is like an ice cream cone. You have to look at one day at a time. And speaking of eating things, how do you eat an elephant? Say it with me. One bite at a time. It's easy to get overwhelmed by the goal. And over the years, because of our passion for health and wellness, we've helped so many people lose a lot of weight. Yep. That was one of our passions even prior to ministry. And we have found that the easiest way to get overwhelmed is when you're trying to lose weight is to just focus on the finish line only, right? It's like you got that goal of I need to lose 50 pounds or 60 pounds. That's a huge goal. And so you have to focus on doing what needs to be done each day, okay? Smaller goals while pushing yourself to run just a little bit harder, get a little bit stronger, get a little bit stricter over time. Don't do it all at once. Before you know it, your pants won't fit the same, and when you look in the mirror, you're going to be looking at a person who looks completely different than you did a few months earlier. But it doesn't happen overnight. Right. We call this the 1% rule. And here's how it works. It's about continuous improvement. It's a dedication to making small changes and improvements every day, or in the church world, every week, with the expectation that those small improvements will add up to make a very significant difference over time. Right. We've seen the power of the 1% rule in our own church over the years, and we can tell you it really, really works. It works in any area of your life. But we're not the only ones who have seen massive success from this seemingly ineffective improvement strategy. Look at how this cycling team used the 1% rule to bring home a trophy from the Tour de France.
The story is about Team Sky, which is Great Britain's professional cycling team. Sometime in the mid-2000s, around 2010, they hired a man named Dave Brailsford. And at the time, Team Sky had a very middle-of-the-road record when it came to performance on the world stage. They had won about one gold medal in the last 100 years, from 1908 to 2008. They had never won a Tour de France, the premier event in cycling. And when they hired Dave Brailsford, they said, we would like to change this. We'd like to improve our performance. We'd like to reach a higher level of performance. What's your plan to help us do that? And when they hired Brailsford, he said, I have this strategy called the aggregation of marginal gains. And the way that he described it was the 1% improvement in nearly everything that you do. And so they started by looking at a lot of things you would expect a cycling team to look at. They improved their bike tires, made them slightly lighter. They put a more ergonomic seat on the bike. They had their riders wear biofeedback sensors so they could see how each person responded to the training and practice that they did each day. They had their outdoor riders wear indoor racing suits because they were lighter and more aerodynamic. But then they did a variety of things that you wouldn't expect a cycling team to do. They split tested different types of massage gels to see which one led to the best form of recovery. They taught their riders how to wash their hands to reduce the risk of infection and keep them healthy. They even figured out what kind of pillow led to the best night's sleep for each rider and then brought that on the road with them to hotels. So Brailsford said, if we can actually execute on this strategy, if we can aggregate all these small changes, these little 1% improvements, then I think we can win the Tour de France in about 5 years. He ended up being wrong. They won the Tour de France in 3 years, and then they repeated again the 4th year with a different rider. And then just last year, they won for the 3rd time in 4 years. And Brailsford's strategy really came to fruition at the Olympics in London in 2012, when they won 70% of the gold medals available. And so what I'd like to start us off with is the idea that small improvements actually can add up to a very significant change in a relatively short period of time. And this is just basic math, all right? If you get 1% better each day over 365 days, you end up 37 times better at the end of the year. If you get 1% worse, you take yourself almost all the way down to zero. Now, you might say, okay, well, 1% improvements are nice, but clearly no one is going to get 1% better every single day. So is that ever enough to accumulate to anything, considering that we're not going to be perfect all the time? And I would argue, yes. In fact, you can get 10 times better if you get 1% better 5 days a week, 46 weeks a year, so it's about 230 days in total. That gives you 6 weeks off for holidays, illness, laziness, and just generally not getting things done. But you're still 10 times better at the end of the year. And what I would like to propose is that the way to do this is not by setting better goals for ourselves or at our organizations, but by building better systems and obtaining better habits. In fact, you could say that the goal had never changed. They wanted to win a Tour de France each year. They wanted to win Olympic gold medals. It wasn't the goal that made the difference. Instead, it was their system, the way that they applied those improvements in a 1% basis day after day.
Isn't that awesome?
It's a cool story.
For Team Sky, this really helped them to win a bicycle race. Multiple, actually. But for us and for you, winning in the church world converts to helping people to change their eternal address. That's
right.
a really, really big deal.
Yeah.
It's way better than any earthly trophy.
For sure.
So as pastors, church leaders, volunteers in the local church, we have been given the privilege and the responsibility to give God our very best and to be our best as we build his kingdom. Our rewards here are earthly, but they're also eternal.
That's right.
And so if you get 1% better each day for 1 year, think about it, you'll end up 37% better by the time you're done with that year.
That's huge.
That is insanely significant. That is a massive improvement.
Yeah.
So I want you to think about the bigger picture of when in regards to doing the little things each and every day and how big of a difference they make. What caused Team Sky to begin claiming the title year after year? It wasn't that they changed their goal, because their goal was the same the whole time. It had been the same for years. For 100 years, the goal had always been to win the Tour de France. Right. But it was building better systems by 1% every day that made the difference in the long run.
That's right. The question has to be, how can we get 1% better as pastors, as church leaders, and as volunteers each and every week?
All right, so we're going to share two things, two habits, powerful habits that are really going to help you to accomplish this. So the first one is focus on fixing the little things.
Right.
And here's what we mean. In many cases, improvement isn't really about doing more of the right things, but about doing fewer of the wrong things.
Right.
Every week in ministry with our teams, we ask the question, what can we do better next time?
Right.
What this does is it really exposes those tiny losses, if you will.
Right.
But at the same time, it also reveals the 1% goal for next time. So if you'll do this every week, you'll notice a huge improvement and less mistakes moving forward. Essentially, what we're talking about is just constantly evaluating ourselves, evaluating our performance as individuals, but also as teams, and asking ourselves the question, hey, it's not that we're failures, but there are things that definitely didn't go as planned, things that we could do a lot better next time. So as a team, let's talk about it. Let's hash it out, and let's discuss and decide what are those things. Let's make those notes, and then these are tiny little micro goals. So for the next week, we're going to focus on those little things that we didn't do quite right, and we're going to make them just a little bit better. And what we've seen time and time again is a year later, like you have massively surpassed that stage of where you're at in performance, and now you're performing way better than you ever thought possible.
As a team, you need every individual to be trying to get 1% better for the entire team overall to make those mass improvements. The second habit is simply this: do a little more of what already works. What do I mean? Okay, there are certain things that we know, especially in the church realm, that really work. One is the church totally operates like on this volunteer army power, right? The church as a whole doesn't function if we don't have tons of volunteers. And so we realize that as volunteers, we need to be appreciated. We need to appreciate other people. And so some of the things that we know that work is helping people to feel valued. And so something as simple as writing a thank you card, even once a week, right, would be 1% better. And I think about it, right? We lead a lot of teams. We have a lot going on. But I ask myself, wow, Misty, if you wrote one thank you card a week, how long would that take?
Right.
5 minutes maybe, right? What kind of impact would it make if over the next year you wrote 52 cards? You would make such a huge impact on something so small as 5 minutes out of your week, okay? Here's another one. Obviously, when new families are coming through the doors, we talk often about the fact that we need to help new families feel connected, get them connected right out of the chute, right?
That's right.
And so, at least at our church, we see a lot of these VIPs. That is very important people. They're brand new to the church. So we often talk about what would happen if every volunteer would make it a habit of just finding one person that you don't know,
Right.
and intentionally introducing yourself and having even just a 5-minute conversation. Now, think about it, Brad. You know, at MMC, we've got 200, 250 volunteers every week. Imagine if that many people were going up to brand new people and saying, hey, I'm Misty, introducing yourself, having a conversation. Think about how much faster we can assimilate people into the family of God and make them feel at home, right? Another thing I think about is that we want people to get from the Sunday morning experience into groups. That is huge because, guys, it's not about just getting our people to a Sunday service. It is about helping them become fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ, okay?
Right.
That's where the contagious part comes in. And so it's really important to get people connected to a smaller group. So, you know, one of the things we've challenged our team with as a serve team is go up to someone every week and invite them to be a part of life groups or to the youth group, you know,
Right.
be a part of a smaller group. And you think to yourself, does it really make that big of a difference? Oh my gosh, guys, statistics show that the percentages of people who are invited by a friend, by not even a friend, okay, just a personal invite, face to face, or even through a text, the number of people who will come and get connected versus just hearing an announcement from the platform, getting an email from the church, it's astronomical. So imagine if each of us, okay, if every volunteer in a church said, you know, my 1% this week is I'm going to start inviting one person a week to be a part of groups, all right? Here's what you don't do though, okay? You don't start the habit and then drop it the next week. We're not talking about 1% like write a card this week and next week invite a family.
That's
We're
right.
talking about compounding over time. So starting a habit that you actually will do from now till Jesus comes, but it's just tiny, all right? So it's just tiny, tiny little habits. But guys, if we will work on getting 1% better every single week, at the end of this year, we are going to see such a dramatic difference.
That's right.
In this church, in your church, in your personal life, in your walk with God. I just want to encourage you, don't get overwhelmed. Stop looking at the big picture. And for this moment, break it down to one small habit that you can start today. It will make the biggest difference. Well, we hope that you guys have enjoyed today's talk. Share it with someone if it's blessed you. We'll see you next time.